Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Black Tower Podcast. I am Andrew,
I am Daniel.
And I am Josh.
and I am still ashamed of what I said at first. But welcome back to another fantastic episode of the Black Tower Podcast. We are so excited to have you here. So excited to do this episode. Think it is something that everyone loves talking about. I know it's involving one of my most favorite cultures to talk about, the ones that I enjoy the most. But before we get further into it, to avoid anybody potentially having any slight portion of the series tainted for them or ruined, you could almost say it could be ruined. Let's hit them with that super special, awesome spoiler warning.
Ladies and gentlemen, this episode may contain spoilers all the way up to the end of the series of The Wheel of Time, though we will do our best to keep it up to book 4 as the visions in Rhuidean end in book 4. You have been warned.
Excellent.
I'm not going to lie.
Excellent.
I am not 100% confident that I will remember exactly if it happens in book 4 or not.
Tante.
Again, as long as you keep it mostly to the visions that make them who they are, book 4 is where the very beginning, the prologue of book 4 is where they're dealing with everything that happens in the Dragon Reborn. And if I remember correctly, the Dragon Reborn is where they get all of the visions of Rhuidean and all the way up through the fight with Asmodean.
Okay, so the prologue of book 4 is the aftermath of breaking the Aiel?
Correct.
Okay.
Right, and that's one thing I like about the prologues is they kind of give you a little bit of history without actually telling you what's happening. So you're kind of reading it going, what's going on right now? I don't even get this. And then you read in the book and you go, oh.
Well, it's almost like, I mean, whenever episodes do the previously on, but they actually pull from stuff that wasn't in the show, that's basically what the prologues do, is they're basically like previously on Randland. Yes. The Aiel, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, I didn't see that episode. What did I miss? And then they just go into the episode and you're like, oh, it all makes sense.
There was a show that I watched that actually did that. What? Oh, Game of Thrones did that in the recap all the fucking time.
They actually did
previously on Game of Thrones. Here's some bullshit from season 2.
Yes, well, right. That's a little different because that's just pulling you all the way back to actual episodes of the show. This is like if Game of Thrones was like, hey guys, we're just going to come out and tell you who Jon's parents are without ever actually shooting that in the script. And you're like, what the fuck?
By the way, here's a random F-16 flyby.
Or a Starbucks coffee cup.
Oh, good grief. Do you know what kills me about that? And I know this is a bit of a tangent. Is everybody's all disappointed with season 8, and I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. I actually didn't watch the show, and I didn't enjoy the books. It just kind of cracks me up because it's like, you know, everybody's talking about the actors are so disappointed and so, but I'm like, when you've got a water bottle in one scene and a Starbucks cup in the other scene, that says a lot as to how much people actually care about how things are progressing. Like, to me, that illustrates a lot of people who are sitting on set going, whatever.
So, to be fair, that actually, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I do actually agree with that, though there is a slight other explanation for this, which is actually what people were complaining about for the 8th season, is that the 8th season was incredibly rushed, and that they had to put so much content into the episodes that they were starting to miss things. Because, of course, it was like, all right, cool. So we literally have 2 takes to get this. And if we don't do this in 2 takes, we're fucked. We don't have the time to go ahead and do this. And so it definitely is that attitude in a lot of ways does boil down in some ways to, all right, we don't care anymore. We just need to get this done, which goes back to your, people on set not caring. But I do think that it came from a slightly different place of everybody was so rushed. And of course, when it came out, the audience was so rushed that everybody was like, what the fuck? Like, could you not, though?
No, and I get
Let's be honest. Season 8 is the kid in church that shit his pants during the middle of prayer, and everybody's embarrassed about it. It was an image, not an image, but a scenario I had in my head, and I thought it was absolutely hilarious. I don't know why it came to me as we were talking about Season 8, but I feel like it adequately describes my feelings about Season 8 of Game of Thrones.
All right.
Sure. Well, now that we've talked about Game of Thrones for a number of minutes and yet not actually introduced our topic, Andrew, would you like to go ahead and tell the people what we're actually going to be talking about? I'm sure they've taken the Wheel of Time clues.
Tell the people
why you've not actually told them our actual topic.
Yes. So this is an idea that Jack O. Shadows from our Discord posted on the 22nd of August of 2019. And it's a deep dive exploration into the views that Rand has in Rhuidean. Which, whether that's pronounced correctly or not, is how I'll forever say it.
Rhuidean.
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 At least I'm not saying Rhuidean.
Rhuidean. Definitely better. I don't know why you would ever make Rhuidean and Pauladine sound alike.
Ooh,
but
damn. Ouch.
Are they making food with butter in the?
There's too much butter in this Aiel city.
Oh my god!
Which is absolutely horrible when you think about how hot it is during the day. It's a literal giant skillet, and not the band.
So little bit of history about Rhuidean.
Nicely done.
Yeah, like
in the Aiel Waste. Built by the Gen Aiel. Now, do you know who the Gen Aiel are? No, you don't. It's okay.
Pretty sure most of our listeners do, but continue.
Well, I know, but basically, it's an abandoned city. It's a ruin. Oh shit. Okay, sorry. No, it's a ruin. It's an empty city. It's a whole ass city that's just empty, and there is.
And Josh, how big is this ruined city?
It is massive. It is large.
Like, give us some comparisons on like other cities in the Wheel
If
of
I were
Time.
to compare it to Tyr, I'd say it would be smaller than Tyr. Maybe even a little bit smaller than Camelin. No, it's not unbelievably large. I mean, in the story, you see Rand, Matt,
you bastards! I just got that fucking joke, by the way.
Not Couladin.
Moraine. Well, no, I'm saying these are the people you see that run into the city.
Couladin doesn't. And you're a lying sack of shit. Couladin never.
What are you, a fucking Shido Io? Really?
Oh
maybe.
My God.
Do you have one of them there walkie-talkie boxes? Or are you a traitor? You have no honor. You have encountered all the toes. All 10 of them.
You have no G. You got all them toes, boy.
Don't forget Aviendha going in there now, too.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, Aviendha goes in at a later time, doesn't she?
Aviendha goes in at exactly the same time.
I think she's the first one.
Same time.
She's the first one.
No, well, Aviendha and Moraine go in first.
Yeah.
And then
I do love when Moraine goes in too, and all the wise ones
follows.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not terribly interested in Moraine going in, but I would follow Aviendha anywhere. Those of you that don't remember,
this portion of the podcast brought to you by
Victoria's
Andrew
Secret?
Thirsting on Aviendha.
Oh, I almost got excited. I thought it was brought to us by Victoria's Secret. I've been asking for so long. That'd be a weird sponsor to have, like an all-male podcast sponsored by Victoria's Secret.
I'd be down. What up, Victoria's Secret marketing director? I know you listen.
But for those of you that don't know, like Victoria, wow. Aviendha is my celebrity crush from the Wheel of Time.
Andrew just got his monthly Victoria's Secret catalog. That's why he's hung up on Victoria's Secret.
Oh God, no, I can't. I'm not going to pay for that. Have you seen the internet?
Oh yeah.
Why would I pay for the catalog? But, yeah.
I'm ashamed at how long that took me. I'm just saying.
Anywho, so those are the 4 that we see roughly all at the same time go into. I paused for somebody else to say it because I would mess it up.
Rhuidean.
Rhuidean. Okay, now that no wonder you guys are getting it right every time. The pronunciation is right here. Bastards.
It's actually almost like we looked things up before we opened our mouths.
Weird.
I did too, but the one thing I did not pull up was stuff specifically on Rhuidean. I had like visions up and the glass columns and like a bunch of other stuff. Didn't have the actual page up, so you're right. I failed. I'm sorry.
It's okay. We'll forgive
I'm
you.
sitting there like, how are they so confident that this is how it's said? What are they? How does he know like the size comparison to cities? And I'm sitting here like, I finally pull it up, and I'm like,
specific.
I finally put it on. I'm like, you motherfucker.
Well, a couple things about Rhuidean though that I mean, first off, to our knowledge, it's the only like city, like a brick and mortar city in the Threefold Land that we know of. Is that correct?
That
Or
is
someone
correct.
correct me if I'm
It's
wrong.
it's
Yeah.
the only
But it's
like
the only-
wetlands-ish style building.
Yeah.
City.
And it was built before the breaking of the world. So this is a city from the Age of Legends. And a couple of very, very, very strange things about the city. First off, Aiel don't go there. They don't. They the only ones that go there are women who can channel, who go on their quest, and if they come out, they can take their place as wise ones. They start out as initiates, of course, and work their way up. But apprentices, this is a synonym, okay? Serving up some synonym roles.
Sure.
And so they avoid this place for the most part, and the only ones who really know, who go, clan chiefs also go.
Yes, clan chiefs and wise ones are the two people in Aiel society who actually go to Rhuidean, and they experience some shit, and then they go back and they tell nobody about it.
Except other wise ones and other clan chiefs. They can talk with it. They can talk. Wise ones can talk to other wise ones about it.
Right.
And clan chiefs can talk to other clan chiefs. But the
And they
fun fact that I
rarely
found,
do, even though they're allowed to.
yeah, which we find
Well,
out once we
because
get
it's
into the
such a-
visions and what they are. We can talk more about
Yeah.
it. But the clan chiefs
So-
go into Rhuidean. Rhuidean. Jesus fuck. They go into the R city once, but the wise ones go twice.
Correct, because they actually encounter two different things in Rhuidean. The men who go to become clan chiefs only experience the second part of what the wise ones experience.
Correct.
One other thing
the
to
city of Celine
note
Dion.
real quick.
I'm sorry, I could not resist.
Let beauty come out of ashes.
Now I want to watch Deadpool 2.
Oh yeah, you do, because it's a great movie.
This is the point where Daniel's like, we
Um,
can't ever get shit done because these two do this random bullshit.
What I was gonna say though is that something amazing about Rhuidean is, first off, it's not just the act of going into the city, and I know that we're rehashing this for a lot of our listeners because they are all familiar with this, but I just kind of want to get everybody on the same playing field. But when they go into the city, they find a courtyard, and in this courtyard is running water, which is amazing.
Incorrect.
A full-grown what?
Yeah,
Incorrect.
That's not yet.
It only becomes
Oh,
that way
I'm sorry.
after Rand fights as
Right.
Rand.
So
Apologies.
go. Let's back yourself up, sir.
But there is also
Before-
an Aviendha tree.
Before you get to Aviendha, back up to even trying to enter the city as we first see it. Let's start from the outskirts of this maelstrom.
Fine, let's go in order.
That's what we're trying to do.
I mean,
Go
is
ahead.
there a nut?
No,
Let's
go
start
ahead.
at the very beginning. A very good place to start. When you read, you begin with A, B, C. When you Wheel of Time, you begin with a cloud-covered city.
See, this is the point where you argue that you started with a beginning, just not the same beginning that we were thinking about.
Well, that's where I was getting ready to go.
Oh,
But Daniel was talking.
Nicely done.
That's a nice recovery. Anytime you're like too far ahead in the story, but like, well, no, you're not at the beginning.
I was
No.
just starting at a different beginning. There are neither beginnings nor endings to the Wheel of Time, but there are.
But this was a beginning. These don't exist, but this was one.
But anyway, we are going to start a little bit previous to that. As you approach Rhuidean,
yes.
there is a large smoke screen cloud barrier that is going on outside of Rhuidean that actually hides the entire city from view. So you are basically just walking up to a complete vat of nothingness. And it's very, in my opinion, perturbing.
Well, yes, it is, because you don't know. I mean, all you know is you're walking. Okay, I guess I'm going the right.
Because wasn't
way.
it?
Hope I'm
Yeah.
going the right
So
way.
what initially? What is it? Where's the where they're all, where the wise ones are all camped and stuff before? So everybody, the spoiler warning is all the way through book 4. So everybody already knows about the portal stones with Varen and the flash,
Yes,
freaking rave party that Rand pushes the entire group of people through.
Yeah.
And the wise ones expect them to be here in like a couple weeks. Doesn't it take them like something to get there instead? But I have to think out of order. Anyway, where do they come out as? Like, where do they arrive?
I do not actually remember.
Because there's a name.
It's a very important like set of hills.
Yeah, it's a set of hills outside of Rhuidean.
Correct.
Right? Did I say
Let's
right?
see if I can find it. I'm looking at portal stones.
Rhuidean, yeah. And it's where every apprentice wise one that wants to become a wise one meets, or all the clan chiefs go, because they have to request the permission of wise ones to even enter what is essentially a holy city, sacred city for them. Which makes sense once you find out what the fuck you learn. I can understand why you would have controlled access after that shit. Because what should have happened to the Shan Chan can happen to the Aiel. We're going to leave that at that. Those of you that know, you know.
It is true. It is known.
I have known. Sorry. The Crucible was a good movie. But so they come out of the portal stones with the help with Rand using Sidene and
so
I think
indeed, and they show up near Rhuidean on the slopes of Chandar. And possibly there is possibly at least another one in the Aiel Waste, but it never comes up in the books.
Yes. Yeah. So this is where they show up because Aviendha has been inexplicably, without question, summoned by the wise ones, and they've also told Moraine in her dreams that she must come too. And Moraine's like, I have a feeling that they are right. I can feel it in my bones.
I can has feelings.
And so they go because they're lamenting over how long the journey's going to take, and Rand's like, I might know our way.
Ho, ho, ho. But wait, I'm the Dragon Reborn. Also, by the way, guys, I do want to throw out there, I actually did have it wrong. I was a book early. All of this actually happens in book 4. There's actually... So definitely be familiar with all the way up through and including book 4. The prologue of book 5 is where they finish up with all of this. So you've now actually been warned. We haven't gotten anything that would have been a problem, but now...
This is your post-warning warning.
Indeed.
So all this happens, and they're like, let's go. They go through the portal stones, because Varen actually has, from her time, because she's a Brown, Aja member.
And a total BAMF.
Oh, yeah.
I love Varen.
Rand's like, do you know about these things? And she's like, I know a little bit about them. I can kind of read them. And he's like, okay, well, let's go read them. And then as soon as they start reading them,
She's like, cool. So this symbol is for Rhuidean.
and he's like, cool. And as soon as he's like, okay, let's use it, she's like, something's
Let's
wrong.
go.
Something's wrong. I can feel it. It's just a feeling I get.
Yep. And he ends up wasting a bunch of time.
Oh yeah, wasn't it like it was a couple months, right?
It is. It's like 2 months.
Yeah, it's like 2 months. Like they're like, we're gonna go here and do this because it's gonna be faster. We'll get there like a day. 2 months later.
No, the funny thing is that if you're actually
so
being
tragic.
honest, the journey to Rhuidean would have taken at least that much time, so they probably still did actually save a little, but it's not nearly what Rand thinks it's going to be.
Not only that, but they took on a lot of emotional distress.
Everybody just literally saw so in the flashes, everybody just saw every literal possible inauguration of their life. And so everybody shows up in the waste having the worst existential crisis of their lives.
And like 90% of them are just throwing up and things like that. It's bad. It's very bad.
It's similar to when Guardians of the Galaxy 2, when they do like 800 jumps
yeah,
or
they
whatever
do
the
all the
jumps are, and at the end, Baby Groot is sitting there with a big smile on his face. He's like, that's what it was.
So the actual event,
yep.
is terrifying for people. It's important for certain character developments because it does have benefits as far as like what we consider benefits for reading the rest of the story. But the apps, like, maybe I'm just an asshole, but the hilarity of the way things transpired, it makes me laugh every time because it's like, we're going to save a bunch of time. I done fucked up. Sorry, guys. You just lost 2 months of your life. And by the way, you saw every possible conceivable way your life could have gone fucking horribly.
Yeah. Well, and again, it is a very like sort of morbid humor to it, because this is really where Rand is starting to become very cocky. And so he's used a portal stone one time intentionally.
Oh yeah.
And he had one of the Forsaken helping him do it and make sure he got it right.
Yes.
But now he's just like walking up to a portal stone and he's like, yo guys, I got this. I'm going to save us so much time and nothing bad is going. Oh, God. It's 2 months later. Why did we do this? Oh.
Aren't there literally soldiers that are like, is this real life? Ah!
Yes. Well, and that's the thing, is they come out of this thing and so many people just can't even process what's happening.
Which is interesting because they do a better job of dealing with this than one particular person does in the glass columns of Rhuidean, which we'll talk about in a minute. But anyway, they all show up on the slopes of Chandar, not too far from where the Wise Ones and the other Shido Aiel are hanging out.
Do you think the name Chandar,
waiting for?
Do you think the name Chandar took inspiration from Charmander and Charmeleon? Because it's hot as fuck.
I don't think so.
Seeing as how neither of those things existed by the time that Robert Jordan wrote this.
Oh, really?
I am 100% sure that they did not get inspired by it.
Moving on.
But they ended up on the slopes of Chandar, and they meet up with the Wise Ones, who tell Aviendha that she needs to go get naked because you are only allowed to enter Rhuidean in what you came into the world in. And that she's going to go become a Wise One apprentice after entering Rhuidean and basically doing the same trial that the Aes Sedai do for the Accepted.
I'd be in horrible shape. I'd be like, Aviendha, I'll carry your bags. I don't have any bags. I'll carry them anyway. Which just, we got to stop this because it's just sounding increasingly creepier and creepier, which is not how it's meant.
I mean, the only person who's making it creepy is you.
Well, yeah.
So, like, the fact that you're standing here being like, guys, we need to stop being creepy about Aviendha is a little hurtful.
You know what? To be fair, there was that little background voice of Josh is going like, Andrew.
I mean, it's true.
That was totally the voice of your conscience.
My conscience sounds like you. No
Oh
wonder I'm
yeah,
so
though I'm
fucked.
honored to be your shoulder devil.
Whose conscience doesn't sound like Josh?
Hey, I'm your own personal dark one. You're welcome.
Anyway, so she runs off.
At this point, they also talk to Moraine, and she's like, "Hey guys, I'm pretty sure I need to go down into Rhuidean too." And they're like, "No, you don't. Shut up." And she's like, "Guys, we all know that." And they're like, "All right, fine, go hang out in Rhuidean." So she also
I'm
gets
totes
naked
going.
and then runs after Aviendha. And then they all look at Rand and they're like, "Yo, sup?" And he's like,
You going in or what?
"I'm pretty sure I also have to go into Rhuidean." And they're like, "We thought you'd never ask." And then all of a sudden, because he's a butthole, and yet also amazing, Matt comes up and he's like, "Yo, I also need to go to Rhuidean." And they're like, "Hell no. You are a garbage person wetlander and you can't enter our sacred city." And he goes, "Yeah, but I'm going to though."
Yeah, but my buddy's not going in there alone.
So eventually they do
Peace.
agree that Matt can go with him, and he leaves to go join Rand entering Rhuidean. And the funny thing here is that Aviendha and Moraine needed to go stark naked, but all of the dudes are totally fine to just have all their stuff.
Because you know.
Except weapons. They're not actually allowed to have weapons, but those are the only things that they have to take
Right.
off. They're like, "Hey, shirt, breeches, nah, you're fine with those. Sword, take that shit off immediately."
Right?
And it's one of those wonderful
Wetlander sword.
right? And it's one of those wonderful moments where it's Matt pulling out all of the daggers that he has from the
Yes.
various places on his
Like,
body.
you remember when they searched the
And-
Joker's pockets in the the Dark Knight movie?
Yes.
Pretty much
Yeah.
what's going on.
Or when
I would even take it a step further and say Jim Carrey in The Mask.
Oh, I would take it even a step further back and talk about the scene in the Two Towers where Aragorn and Legolas are removing all of
that's a
their
good one,
weapons. It's great. It's fantastic. And then, of course,
Also
I
a
think
good
they
one.
actually mention in the passage that they all look at Matt for a second, and he's like, "Oh, yeah," and pulls out an extra one from somewhere else.
And I'm like, the Aiel start like they're like they admire him.
Right?
They look at him with admiration. They're like, "Damn boy, okay."
So then Rand and Matt go and travel to Rhuidean. They do not see Moraine or Aviendha on the way there because they had a not insignificant head start, and Aviendha is also really good at running. And they approach this sea of clouds and fog that they can't see through and walk into it totally blind. And open up
as you do.
into this lovely courtyard, which we mentioned before.
Yes.
That was the
And
point
there
where Josh
is-
started his
Say what's
part
in
of
the
story.
courtyard now.
And there is a very large fountain that has no water in it, but is ready
It's dry.
for water.
Yes,
It's
I
ready.
was
It's
mistaken.
a thirsty boy.
It was. He's a thirsty boy. No, it was. And that was the shocking thing about it is that it's this big, like, beautiful fountain that is completely dry.
Yep.
But looks as though it should be running, and they're weird by that. But not only that, but in this courtyard there is an Aviendha tree
Yup.
and numerous Angreal, Sangreal, and Terangreal.
Mm-hmm.
Just like piled up, like
Just
walking into an
strewn
old
everywhere.
warehouse. Yeah, strewn about. But like if you walk into an old warehouse, the way I pictured it was Indiana Jones, the last one with the aliens, and they go into that warehouse in the very beginning.
What
And
movie
there's
was
just-
this?
Indiana Jones.
The Last
was
Did
Crusade.
you
right.
see the last one? No. The very, very last one.
No,
with the
that's-
CGI gophers.
That's the last one. The Last Crusade is the
That's
last Indiana Jones movie.
then yes, the
I'm
Last Crusade,
confused.
where the warehouse where they put the Ark of the Covenant at the end is stacked from floor to ceiling with just random crates, right? And you don't know what's in them.
Oh, like Warehouse 13.
Yeah.
Oh,
Another
That's
apt
fantastic.
illustration there. But just hundreds of these things just lying around, and Rand's just like, what the crap is this place?
Right?
And this huge Aviendha, which is like what? Like they're
100 feet high.
Yeah. And there's only
is 100 feet tall.
And they only knew of
right now.
They only knew of the one that Layman cut down. And
which was Aviendha something.
It was a trimming.
Correct.
Yeah, it was a trimming of
Aviendha.
Yeah, I don't think that was it, but I mean,
that was for our Spanish listeners.
Sí. So
Aviendha. Yeah, because they're both part of a species of tree called the chora, which are large living tree-like constructs with trefoil, tre foil,
trefoil
shaped leaves created during the Age of Legends.
Correct.
So they emit a sense of peace for any who pass below their branches.
Yes, and they know about the two that exist, which are that existed at least, which are the ones that the one that the Green Man tends in his area of the Blight, and the one that Layman cut down.
Yeah, those were the only two cuttings that
they were aware of.
Can remember. Yeah, can remember. And both at this point in the story are dead.
Right.
Destroyed.
And that's why it's so shocking.
Well, we know the one that was in Kyrian that Layman cut down is dead.
Correct.
Yes.
It is up for interpretation whether the one that the Green Man was watching
suspect
actually
very
is
heavily. It's very heavily implied that it is dead. It's heavily implied. Let's leave it at that.
That's what I said. I'm agreeing with your statement.
I'm agreeing with your statement, actually, because you said it, and I'm saying the same thing. That's an agreement.
Ooh, fair enough.
God damn it.
Tooch.
God damn it, Daniel. Back at it with the confusing vocabulary.
Stanley Tucci.
The Tooch. Besides Aviendha.
Yeah, so the shocking thing about this one was that it is full grown and it is healthy and beautiful, and to this point we've never seen one.
Same thing all my relatives said about me.
That they're all yes, of course. Yeah. And then what we've come to find in this courtyard is a ter'angreal that are three glass pillars, right?
Oh, it's a whole set of columns. There are a bunch.
A whole set.
Yeah, it's described as a small forest.
Yes.
Oh, that's right. What am I?
There
thinking?
are three rings.
Oh, I'm thinking the rings.
Yeah, they're assigned in concentric rings.
Yes.
I'm taking
for the Aes Sedai.
Yeah, well, for the wise ones.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which the way I think about it is almost like something akin to the Olympic symbol, close to it, but not quite.
See your past, present, and future. It's gonna fuck you up in the head.
But all of these pillars are nearly 100 feet tall because they're almost as tall as Aviendha, but they are noticeably thin in comparison to their height.
Correct.
So they're super tall but super skinny, like slender.
Yep. Right. And again, so right now the story we're following is from the perspective of Rand and Matt because, like Daniel said earlier, we don't have vision on Moraine or Aviendha at this point.
Yeah,
because they had the head start.
Spoiler alert, and later on we do actually get a little bit of information on each of their journeys, but at least at this point we don't know anything that happened to them in Rhuidean at all.
Right. And then so I guess Rand and Matt kind of have a conversation, and they're kind of like, okay. And then Rand kind of looks at Matt and says, "No, this is the end of the line for you. I'm going in." And Matt's like, "Okay, I'll hang out here."
I'll check out
And then
these
I think he's-
Terangrial.
Yeah, and then he's like, "I'll just play with this stuff over here."
You know, this stuff that like uses the power or amplifies the power. You know that thing that I'm really terrified of, like all the time, always. I'm just gonna fuck with this stuff.
Well, and in all fairness, like up until this point, we don't really know much about him, and the assumption is if you can't channel, you can't really use these things. These things are just inanimate objects, that
Except
don't
for
really
the
matter.
things you can.
Except for the things that you can use. Yes. So Rand goes in, and that's where his visions begin.
And before we get into those actual visions, does anybody have a lovely movie quote for the day?
Oh, I wanted to have one. What was the movie I was thinking?
Did anybody get our last one?
They did not, or at least I did not see any Twitter replies.
What was the
Let
last
me
one?
look it up to make 100% sure.
Last one wasn't the quote from Willow, was it?
No, that was the one before.
Oh, what was the last one?
I'll buy that for $1.
And I don't think anybody actually. I'm sure that somebody heard it and cared, but we did not actually get tweeted.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody got that one. Give me like 5 seconds, and I'll definitely have one for us.
Yeah, unfortunately, it does not look like anybody actually went ahead and posted on our Twitter.
All right, how
At
about
all.
how about this one? It's not a man purse. It's called a satchel. Indiana Jones wears one.
Well done. I like that one.
I get a lot of compliments on this.
Do you, Josh?
Yeah, yes, he does.
Yeah.
All right, I like it.
I like that. That's a good movie quote.
It is.
So if anybody has got that down.
Yeah, sorry. Just to make it clear,
Please.
every week on our podcast that you are currently listening to,
We try.
you know, we do our best to enter at some point in the episode a relatively obscure movie quote, or at least a quote from a relatively obscure movie. And the first person to go onto our Twitter account, which is at TowerPod,
Cast.
is it TowerPod? Yeah, Tower Podcast on Twitter. Just go ahead and at us with what the movie is that quote is said and the role that said it. And we will gladly give you a shout out on our next episode next week. As for this episode, no one decided to take us up on it, which is a little hurtful. So
And if you
let's
happen to
not make
be,
that a thing again, guys.
if you happen to be one of those lovely listeners that only has interactions with us on Discord,
Correct.
you can let us know on Discord, and we'll still mention you there. We'll definitely still mention you in the tweet, and we'll probably shout you out in the episode along with the Twitter winner as well.
Correct.
Indeed.
So the first person on each of those things, or if there's only one person on either, we will give you a shout out because we love you for actually paying attention and doing, at the very minimum, a quick Google search.
And listening through all of mainly my insane ramblings, but all of our talking.
No.
Indeed.
I mean, we all talk
Indeed.
pretty equally, but I'm just insane most of the time.
And now
All
for
right.
something completely different.
So go ahead and give us the quote one more time, and then I'll take the first vision.
Indeed.
So the quote is, "It's not a man purse. It's a satchel. Indiana Jones wears one."
That's right.
Awesome.
Okay. So, guys, the first vision we take as a vision of the past. Okay, and you see these from the perspective and point of view of your genetic relatives. And this is the first time we get confirmation that Rand is of an Aiel lineage,
Correct.
isn't it?
I mean,
Yeah, because
basically it's all
spoken
been
it.
true, and you've been like,
Yeah,
yeah, there's no way he's not. But you are correct that this is kind of the first time that they truly say, "Hey, this is
well,
actual
I just
evidence."
remember.
As far as
Yeah,
yeah,
I just remember reading it like as a kid. Well, as a first time reader, I remember reading it, going, "Okay, is he actually Aiel, or is this like?" Does he just look like an Aiel for some weird circumstance? And everybody's like, oh, okay, he just looks like an Aiel. No, this right here is they're saying, nope, you're definitely an
correct. And it's actually,
Aiel.
before
And
we get into the vision, I it's funny because this is actually really, I played the very first Assassin's Creed game. And the very first Assassin's Creed game reminded me so much of this moment in the Wheel of Time, as like
yeah,
going back and living the life, or at
oh
least a
yeah,
moment of the life of one of your ancestors. It was crazy. And shout out if you guys who created the Assassins, of Montreal and whatnot, um that's a band, just Montreal Studios, or Santa Monica. If you guys actually
really
got
good.
your inspiration for this particular for that game from this particular scene in the Wheel of Time, you guys are incredible. Continue.
I mean, they're incredible anyway. But yes,
It's also true. Sorry, let me just throw that out there.
incredible. So Rand finds himself kind of going through some kind of crazy ass quantum splitting, but then all of a sudden he kind of comes back to himself and he's going, oh, I'm Mandine. I'm gonna go with Mandine. He's a
Mandark. Ha 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 ha.
and they're in Rhuidean with his wife Sialdre and other clans who listened to the calling and came. And it's interesting because they're in Rhuidean, and it talks about the Gen Aiel who are there, and they've collected these glass columns, this forest of glass, around the tallest tree he's ever seen, which is the Aviendha, which means it's been around for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
And he also starts pondering over the Gen Aiel and how they are like the lost ones. And so you start to pick up these fragments and you start to get these little things that are happening. And then Mandine starts to have a conversation, and you get this conversation where he talks about all of the Aiel who do not come will die.
Mm-hmm.
Every bit of them are going to die, and they will not survive. And all around them in this scene, you can see Rhuidean is not complete. They're like in the process of building it. And there was a lot of clan chiefs there. There's a whole bunch of people there, but throughout the series of this conversation, you also get the distinct impression that there are a lot of Aiel who did not come to this. And it is it's really interesting to say, or it's an interesting thing to sort of picture, because for me, the Aiel, you never really know how many there are, but there just seems to be endless numbers of these guys. So he starts going through all these memories, and he starts having these thoughts from the perspective of Mandine. And he kind of has his own consciousness of himself, but he's also able to sort of imagine things and remember things as if he were Mandine. And he starts remembering people that he's spoken to, family members that, memories he had with them. And it's just a really interesting perspective. And the main, I don't know, I mean, what else do you guys want to add to that? That's the biggest thing.
that's a really good description of what's going on, because it does sort of describe it as Rand knows he's Rand, but also he's absolutely Mandine and can remember all of these things that he should not be able to remember if he's just Rand. And they have this conversation outside the city about how fucked all of the Aiel who don't show up are, and about how they're probably all fucked anyway, even the ones who do come. But at the same time, like, they have so much more of a chance because there's actually been a foretelling about what is to come, and presumably it actually seems like this is the breaking of the world. So we are pre-breaking as Rhuidean is being frantically built
to try and protect them.
Yeah. And it clearly, based on the fact that later on we see it just, in ruins, something went wrong. And we don't actually see the vision of, Rhuidean not being finished and the breaking coming anyway, and different things like that. But it is all very strongly implied that Rhuidean did not get finished and the breaking happened and a lot of people got boned.
Right. And I remember what I was going to say.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, man. I don't want you to forget.
Well, I was just going to say, I remember what I was going to say as I was talking. I was in that vision he was in kind of reliving some of those memories and thinking about some of those people. One of the people he thinks about is someone very further back in the past named Roderick, who is also a relative and who later I believe Rand has visions from the perspective of Roderick as well.
In fact, so at this point, it actually seems to go pretty much in line from his lineage from Mandane back each generation.
Right.
And we'll get to, how far back it goes and whatnot in a minute. But but for this one, it is interesting that in this vision, it tosses out sort of the prophecy of the Karakarn.
Yes.
That again is also foretold.
It is not, and that's for me is another interesting point. Is whenever the Jin Aiel confront the clan chiefs and they're talking to the clan chiefs and they come up from Rhuidean. Did I say that? Was I closer that time? Rhuidean.
You were closer that time. Rhuidean. It was great. I'm proud of you.
I'm trying.
Okay, I was making it honest, but if you want to be patronizing.
Hey,
he was closer.
Hey, I'm trying. Damn it. But there's two Aes Sedai that are with the Jin Aiel that come up to talk to the clan chiefs, and it's very notable because they're not just any old Aes Sedai. They have the ageless face, but their hair is so blonde, so gray, it's almost see-through. Which means they must be freaking ancient. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
And it's one of the Aes Sedai that gives the foretelling. And what the Aes Sedai literally says.
Guitarra? No. Sorry.
Because you have Cheridin who asks, who is another clan chief, who asks if they want to go ahead and select the one who will lead the Aiel. And it's when the Aes Sedai says that one will come later. The stone that never falls will fall to announce its coming. Of the blood, but not raised by the blood. He will come from Rhuidean at dawn and tie you together with bonds you cannot break. He will take you back and he will destroy you. Because the chief does then. He's like, well, the Jinn only want to take control of all the clans. You can fuck off. But the Jinn are just pretty much like, actually, we all know we're going to fucking die and disappear regardless. So we're here getting this place ready. Not because, we once thought it was going to be home, but now we know it's bigger than that.
It's posterity.
But we're doing it to keep the faith, to keep true to what we once were, to make strong leaders for the future. And
which I think my favorite part about that is that, again, it's so morbidly humorous, but just imagine just somebody somebody that you respect comes up to you with a lot of authority and says, hey, what's up? who's gonna go ahead and lead like me and my company, or like me and my government, or like me and my whatever? And the person goes, oh, it's gonna be this dude who comes in the future. And they're like, nah, you're just trying to take control of us. And literally the person just looks at them and goes, all of us are going to be dead. Don't worry about it.
No, trust me, it's all good. You won't live to see this.
Of course,
No, it's
Rand's
true.
ancestor, Manding, that
Correct.
agrees to be he's the first clan chief that agrees to go with the Jin Aiel. And then they're like, well, you can't bring your weapon. And he just laughs and he's like, I'll go. I'll match your courage, because he thinks it's like a contest of bravery.
Right, right. And it's really the interesting things that we get from this interaction. So you get, as each interaction or as each vision happens, you get a fragment or almost a whisper or a moral of some type that
Yep.
you are to that the experiencer is to hear and learn. And in this particular vision, the biggest thing you hear is, those who cannot learn will not live.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's one of those things that just don't make a lot of sense.
Yep. Neither
At the
does the
time.
importance and the
Yep.
emphasis on the Jin Aiel. Doesn't make a lot of sense
Correct.
yet. But you already get the
Yeah.
Especially because at this point, I mean, the Gen Aiel are a very odd group of Aiel, and all of the other Aiel look down on them, but they're not different. Like they
Yeah,
are
they
just
almost-
Aiel. And all
they
of the
almost
other
shun
Aiel are
them.
like, why are you like this?
I mean, let's
And the Gen Aiel are like, because we are. You'll understand someday when we're gone. And then, of course, later on, when you actually go to, the Aiel talking about the Gen Aiel and where Rhuidean is in the land of the Gen Aiel and different things, you actually do get this like weird reverence for this
Mhm.
clan that is no more. That at the time, everybody was like, dude, why? Why is
exactly.
our awkward little brother like this? He's so
Yep.
weird. And now in present times, as far as what Rand is going through, they're like, oh yes, the Gen Aiel. They were sacred and wonderful, and we don't
And
know
now
why
they
they're
are
gone.
lost to
Like,
us. Yes.
essentially they're referred to in present times as the clan that is not.
yes.
Right. And it's one of those just beautifully tragic stories. And I really love it. And again, like Daniel's saying, it's these guys are revered. They are the lost clan. They were lost to us, and we don't know where they are now.
And of course, that's crazy, because of course there have been many battles where many Aiel have been lost, but there is never ever in Aiel history that they can trace back been a clan that has just been decimated. Every other clan has picked up from their losses and gone on to go ahead and restart or build back up, or all of this different stuff. The Gen are unique in the fact that there are none of them left, and no one's interested in picking up the mantle. And that is very interesting.
It's almost, and we talk about Giotto, right? And everybody knows Giotto. It's almost like they've gathered, or
and if you don't know Giotto, you already have toe. Sorry, continue.
It's almost like the Gen Aiel have gained so much G that everybody just looks at them and just is like, wow.
They've transcended Giotto.
You can't even to even say that you would try to gain that much G would automatically give you toe.
Basically,
you're out of sheer arrogance. You have toe, my friend. You have absolutely no clue what you're talking about right now. Do not speak their name.
Yep. And so
And
we
so,
we
yeah.
see all of this, and we basically see the end of the Gen Aiel at that point. And then Rand is popped back into his body, and he is standing a little further into the forest, having no idea how he has actually gone at all further into the
Right.
forest, as he was pensived into someone else's body.
He took what he thought was a single step.
Yeah.
And as he was mid-step, that's when the vision began. But as he comes out of that first vision, now he's completely surrounded by glass columns, by
Yep.
this forest of glass columns, has no idea where he is, and is like,
I was Mandane a moment ago. Who am I? And of course,
This is
at this point,
really
he
weird.
looks over, and there is another Aiel who we heard mention of that is Couladin's brother, Muradin.
Oh, that's right.
And
That's right.
he is also in the middle of this process of traveling through the forest of glass columns. And at first, he seems kind of okay. He's got very wide eyes right from the beginning, but he seems
Right.
okay. But he is
'Cause he was
also
selected by the
effectively
Shaido
walking
to-
through to become a clan chief. And if he survives the ordeal as they go ahead and describe it, he will be the next clan chief of the Shaido Aiel. And everyone is
Right.
waiting patiently for him on the outside, and it's already been too long. They already
is
talk
why-
about on the outside that he has been in for longer than they expect people to be in, and people have basically written him off already. But they're staying a
Right.
little longer just in case.
Just in case. And that's one of the that's the reason why the Shaido are camped out on the hills outside of Rhuidean.
Correct. They are waiting for
Rhuidean.
Muradin, who is going to come out of Rhuidean as their victorious clan chief and lead them to a great future. And then, after noticing this other Aiel, Rand takes another step and pops into the body of Roderick, who is the grandfather of Mandane and the grandson of Geordum. And he is now further back in time, before the Aiel came to the Threefold Land at all. So he is a young man, as Roderick, who, was mentioned in the other vision. And he is watching the Gen Aiel struggle with their wagons up to the north along the mountains on the east called the Spine of the World. And so they have not yet made it into the Aiel Waste or the Threefold Land, or whatever you would like to call it, depending on what clan you're from. And he is dressed a little differently than, the Aiel of the present times, but, very similarly, because they have actually... they have a lot in common at this point already. And he is basically there with his family as things are going very badly and they are needing to leave their home because the world and the environment have turned against them.
Right.
And they are no longer able to grow things where they are supposed to. They are no longer able to do things the way they are supposed to. They are basically being chased out of their lands by bandits and men in steel armor and whatnot. And they are on their way to go live in what will be referred to as the Aiel Waste once they populate it.
Right. And not only that, but so you start to look at, when you talk about the difference between the Aiel and the Gen Aiel, Roderick talks to a son of a chief of the town nearby. And he starts questioning him, like, what's going on? This is weird. This is the Gen Aiel. You guys are the Aiel. Like, what's going on? Like, are they Aiel or what? And Roderick says, they are Gen Aiel. We are Aiel. We are the same, yet not. I cannot explain it any further. And it's not that he doesn't understand. And see, this was one of the things that I've come to realize after reading through for the first time and after learning all these things. It's not that Roderick doesn't understand. It's this sense of, I don't want to say it's reverence at this point in time, but it's a sense of, it's almost like, you know, your derpy little brother.
Yeah.
It's almost like your derpy little brother, you know, you're like, oh, God, he's so embarrassing, but he's my little brother, and God's help whoever comes to mess with my little brother.
Right.
And that's kind of the mission they're on. They all kind of feel incensed, like they're on like babysitter duty to babysit the dorky little brother that they just really can't stand, but at the same time, you know, it's still family, so okay, fine. And so they don't like to talk about it, and it's interesting. It's a real interesting dynamic that they are continually pushing into Rand's. You know, these are the memories that were specifically, whatever entity or whatever power is in this ter'angreal or this glass forest, these are the things that it wants Rand to see.
Yep. And it's interesting. I think that I actually had something incorrect, so I do want to go ahead and throw out a correction. It does seem like there was a catastrophic event of some sort that caused Rhuidean to not be complete and the Aiel to be eradicated and whatnot. But it actually does talk about in the second vision, which is further back, that the Aes Sedai have already destroyed the world once. And so I think they're actually talking about the breaking here.
Oh, the actual
as far
breaking.
As they are remembering it as something that has already happened. And so it could not have been the breaking that actually caused Rhuidean to not be created and the Gen to be eradicated, because I believe that it has actually already happened at this point. And so I don't know if we ever really truly get a good idea of what that other event was. But whatever it was really bad.
Well, I mean, and when you've got
I mean, let's keep in mind where we're at now, that it's only been 5 generations since the breaking.
Right. So you've still got men who are going insane and destroying things left and right. Some
Correct.
are obviously going to have more impact than others.
Correct. So anyway, but yeah, so it is an interesting thing where they really are kind of standing here, and the important sort of moral or information that Rand is getting from this is that at this point, he is discovering that the Gen Aiel are actually Aiel, but also not Aiel.
Right.
And that the real Aiel that he knows of in the present time are actually kind of running around protecting the Gen Aiel because they refuse to fight.
Right.
And so the Aiel are protecting the Gen from all of their enemies. And they actually even say in the whole world, there are only Aiel, Gen, and enemies. Only that. Aiel, Gen, and enemies. So it's basically just showing that the Aiel are so disconnected from the rest of the world at this point because they just consider everyone who is not an Aiel, which includes their derpy little brother, as enemies.
Right.
And their whole task right now is to protect their brother and themselves from everyone else.
And there's one other aspect of this that we first hear the quote secret name of the Aiel.
Mm-hmm.
The name that they don't tell anyone.
Correct.
You hear
and it
one
is
time.
The people of the dragon.
Oh yes, and that is one of those things where everybody goes, you read that for the first time and you go, wait, what?
Yep.
Whoa,
And,
Peggy, get the kid. This is revolutionary.
It's true though, and like it's really an oh shit moment because right as soon as he thinks, he says, oh, this is the secret name that we don't tell anybody. And the only time you ever even hear it is when you receive your spears for the first time. And
then they say,
we don't know what it means. We just know it means, yeah.
Here are your spears. We're the people of the dragon. You say it to anybody unless you're handing them their spears, will kill you.
Exactly. And then again comes that fragment, that statement, that saying where they say, the different things that you're supposed to hear and understand. That's when you have, in the whole world, there were only Aiel, Jen, and enemies. Only that. Aiel, Jen, and enemies. And then Rand flashes out of the second vision.
Yep. And when he pops back out into the columns, he is further into it, again, magically. And Rhuidean seems like he's having a lot more trouble at this point.
He's not okay, guys.
He's not okay. He hasn't actually started bringing bodily harm to himself yet, but he'll get there.
Spoilers.
Dude, we're like a second from it. Calm down. So then he pops into the third vision, where this talks about the birth of the Fardarazmai.
Don't you
and Rand
mine.
is. Oh, sorry.
That's him.
Bastard.
I apologize. Hey, Andrew.
I know it's very.
Could you please do us a huge favor and go ahead and tell us a little bit about the third vision?
Yeah. So, like Daniel's already said, this is the birth of the Fardar, or the Maidens of the Spear. And in this vision, Rand is Geordum, or son of Lewin, or not, or the son of Lewin. Geordum is 18 years old, born in a tent. And let's keep in mind everything we know about the Aiel thus far. And he has never known anything but snow and cold, except for old people telling stories about how seasons were once changing, the earth shaking, and mountains raising and sinking rapidly.
Hey, Andrew, does that sound a lot like an event that happened in the books that they keep talking about over and over again?
Yes, it sounds very much like a certain event that they talk about in the books.
Weird.
Like we've
Also
mentioned the name of it already, like many, many times.
Also fun to note.
I don't think we've talked about it at
We
all.
might only be 4 generations away from that event at this moment.
Also fun to note that he is now Geordum as a young man. Geordum actually was in his previous vision.
Correct.
Roderick looked at his grandfather Geordum, white-haired Geordum, who was with him. And so, you want to start talking about some mind fuckery. Look at the dude I am now the dude in a younger form that I just looked at from my grandson's perspective.
Wait, you're the dude?
I'm the dude.
The dude abides.
Yeah. So,
He does indeed.
Geordum, he has a long spear, a bow slung across his back, a quiver at his waist, and what did I almost say? A veil.
Because we're talking about the Aiel. Aiel.
I thought it was because I saw VEI and for some reason started thinking Vienna sausage. I don't know. That's like nowhere near as good of an excuse.
Well, also Vienna sausage is VIENNA.
Like I said, I need speech therapy. He's wearing a gray-brown coat and breeches. He's proud of his sept, being the largest with its nearly 200 people among the 10 camps scattered north of the wagons. And it irritates him that there's so many more Jinn than there are Aiel. And then the Jinn come asking for help. There's 3 men, 2 women, and Geordum calls them Jinn, but they think that he's mocking them, even though it's true that they are the and this is where it's translated, that they are the quote unquote only true Aiel, because Geordums, are you ready for this? People gave up the way.
Dun dun dun. What?
Now, Geordum calls,
and this is where we get another tidbit that blows our fucking minds.
Oh yeah,
that's right.
Because at first you're like, I've only heard of one way, and there's no way that's the way. And then Geordum's like, I've never held a sword. And you're like, bullshit. No, no, hell no, no.
Yeah.
So
It's true.
Geordum takes the Jinn to his father, Lewin. The Jinn trade with town people, but since they're unarmed, peaceful people, they often get attacked later, having everything that was traded stolen back, plus some. People die, women and children get kidnapped. The Jinn, and this is where it's laid out plainly, they think that the way of the leaf protects them, but they're seen as easy prey in reality. It's also told how the Jinn carry the Torah trees with them in planted barrels, like we talked about earlier. That's what Avensor, yeah, and the other one with the fancy, slightly longer name,
Avendero Dora. Jesus fucking Christ.
And the same one that's never really given a name that the Green Man has in Eye of the World. They're all Chora trees. Or Chora trees. Chora trees. Hold on, let me click a button.
Chora.
Yeah, we're going to go with Chora trees. Lewin, who is Geordum's father, promises to help free the stolen relatives and offers for the Jinn to stay with them if they wish. The Jinn decide that they will, and because of this, they have to take up the spear and use it against men, defending not just themselves, but the rest of the clan too, and they can never go back to the wagons. So this explains that the wagons that they're all that they're scattered north of, the 10 camps scattered north of the wagons, are the Jinn wagons, which by this point you can think of as far as philosophically are pretty much identical to the Tinker wagons. They may not be as colorful. Can't remember if they're described as super colorful or not. I don't think
they're not.
But
not at this time.
No.
Yeah. At this point, they are just normal wagons.
Yeah. As if anything
that will someday become many colors.
As of this point, there's nothing in this series that is normal because you just met a whole bunch of Aiel that don't fight.
Yup.
Well, and not only that, a whole bunch of Aiel who don't fight and who have never fought.
Mm-hmm.
So they take up.
Oh, and by the way, all of those ones that were that have never fought are the only ones that are called the true Aiel. Just FYI, just in case your mind wasn't exploded enough, it has now been completely exploded.
To put it in modern dialogue, will the rim, Jesus Christ, will the real Slim Shady please stand up and teach me how to speak?
Exactly.
I think you could use some lessons from Slim.
It's really hard. How many times does that happen? I think it's like something that I feel is like super clever to say, and then I fuck it up within the first word.
It's okay. We're gonna go ahead and start a tally.
Just a little.
We need
in the podcast.
We need a sound effect.
Go ahead and add a sound effect and a board in my home.
We need the. Well, I did find out, guys. I do have 4 in. I feel dumb for not realizing this earlier, but in my soundboard, I have 4 inputs. I could get a programmable soundboard or a virtual soundboard, and loop an input into my sound, and that way I can do sound effects. Just gotta figure out how to do that. Side note.
But anyway, back to the Jinn Aiel deciding to take up the spear and use them against. Don't you do that.
Don't you dare.
Don't you
I will kill you.
There's a singular man and a singular woman called Morin, whose 5-year-old daughter, Kieran, was carried away, was stolen, kidnapped. Well, the man runs away, sorry. But the woman...
No. One man runs away, but there are a few men who take up the spears.
Yeah.
But there is a single woman.
Yeah.
And this is important.
Yes. And the single woman, Morin, has a 5-year-old daughter, Kieran, that was carried away, kidnapped. And she takes up a spear, and Lewin accepts her quickly.
Well, he actually does not accept her quickly. He stands there and he's like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "I'm going to help get my daughter back." And in fact, it's funny because I think in this, they don't mention, I believe it's actually Morin's husband. who runs away. And she stays and says, I'm going to get my daughter back. And then later, she has this line that the spear is now her husband, because she can't ever go back to the wagons. She can't ever go back to her husband, who decided not to help. And she's just now no longer a Gen Aiel. And she is a Maiden of the Spear, which is a very apt name to name someone who chose a piece of wood with a long metal point on it over their own husband, who was like, nah, fuck this.
Well, that's what he makes, because after she takes up the spear, she's wearing this bulky dress. So that's whenever Jordan tells her to dress like he is. And he chops off an entire pace from the spear shaft, leaving 4 foot length, including the steel. And teaches her how to use
and this is where you actually get the shorter spears that the Aiel fight with for the rest of eternity.
Because they use it, and he's like, fuck, it is quick, it is agile, and it's amazing.
Why didn't we do this before? We're idiots.
Where Jordan is having this mental image of Aiel with these short-hafted spears defeating all of the men with swords.
Yes.
And then there's this brewing interest between Morin and Jordan between each other, and Morin's like, I saw your face in the dream. And then Jordan's like, well, what about your husband? And that's when she leaves us, like, hefts the short spear, and it's like, this is my husband now.
Yep.
This is my husband now.
I tell you what, this is good husband. It will make happy.
This husband never soft.
Oh boy.
And then I think at this point it's the same. In between each one of these visions, the same kind of flicker, where Rand looks over and sees how
Muradin is not taking things well.
He's progressively just like looking worse and worse and worse.
Yep.
And I think up until this point, Rand is behind him, and he's starting to notice that he's progressively catching up.
Correct. And it seems like part of the reason for that is that basically Rand is just racing through these memories, and he's basically just being like, cool.
Yeah.
None of this is that big of a I mean, like, I'm having my mind blown a little bit, but like, I'm a wetlander, so I don't really give a shit. And Muradin is like having his entire identity as a human being tested. And he's
having like the ultimate identity crisis.
And he's having a hard time going into the next, vision from the last one. Either that or Rand's just really lucky and he only has like 8 or 9, and Muradin's standing there like 20 deep and is really fun.
That is another thing. Like, we don't know what Muradin's experience
because
was.
it does actually suggest, or not suggest, it basically says when he talks to the other clan chiefs that they all saw their own ancestors. And so it is entirely possible that they saw more than Rand.
Yep.
Possibly. I mean, not because they have more ancestors, because again, we can trace Rand's lineage all the way back to the beginning of the Aiel. But at the same time, I mean, like, it is possible that they have more connections to more people and therefore see more visions or something.
Right. Yeah, and that's that's part of the tragedy of the Aiel, and you realize, wow, you guys really, it's a real tragedy what you guys have gone through to find out, a society, a culture who based so much on keeping your word and being honorable, only to find out that they failed.
Well, and also, I mean, like, again, obviously that is a huge part of it. And I think that's the bigger part. I absolutely agree. But also just imagine your entire society is not only just based on honor, but also based on fighting. Literally everything that you do, every advancement that you have ever made as a clan, as a sept, as a society, as all of these different things has come out of raiding into the borderlands, raiding into the wetlands, raiding into other clans in the waste.
Yep.
And to find out that not only did you not keep your word and were you not honorable as a people at some point in your history, that thing that you base everything on is the promise you broke.
Right.
Like, holy shit.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to talk about, like, Robert Jordan was such an amazing
He's
writer.
so good.
And
here's the
oh
thing,
my
like,
God.
so much of this, already from what we know of the world, has huge resonance with us.
Oh, yeah.
Then you take the remainder of the series that you read, and I'm not going to go in specifics, but there's words and phrases and names that are used. And I feel like before we get to the very end of the fourth vision, we should do another spoiler warning because it has serious implications for the rest of the series that I think doing a deep dive into Rand's visions we should discuss. There's a certain phrase, a certain name used that changes the entire way we view an entire section of the Aiel culture. Not everything already has changed how we see the Aiel culture. Because at this point, I feel that by the third vision, you can already see a fair guess at the trend that we're going and looking at the history of the Aiel. The Aiel used to be like, it bridges that link between why do they allow the Tinkers into the Threefold Land? Why are Tinkers allowed and not messed with and not fucked with and escorted willingly? And even the Aiel, 90% of them before Rand shatters their world, don't know why. And even then, I don't know if it's ever explained enough to the rest of the Aiel for them to know why. But we're learning right now why.
Yeah.
And like the more and more I think about it, having read the series, the more and more it makes me geek out because it's the dots connecting kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and I think, Daniel, I think you put it best when you said the foundation by which their society is built is the promise that they broke.
Yep.
And in a society where your word is so important, they get insulted when you go, okay, wait, are you sure?
They're like, did I
Because they're
fucking
going,
stutter?
I didn't stutter. I said what I meant, and that is all I say. I am Aiel. My honor is not in question.
We don't
here.
spy.
Oh,
we
by the
don't
way,
lie. We don't ever go back on our word. Why would you even ask that?
exactly.
I mean,
Oh, wait.
Exactly.
Have you ever seen,
Which is probably why they're so prickly about that.
have
Oh,
you ever
absolutely.
seen, have you ever seen a fantasy story device that does so much world building, so much history explanation, so much culture building, but also serves so much to create the foundation of what's to come for the remainder of the series regarding a culture?
I don't know.
Rand's trip through the glass column forest in Rhuidean.
Oh yeah, this is such a big moment in the books. Like it's so huge,
And I feel like
and that's why a reread is so important.
Like
Yeah.
I read it and I was still shook. You know, I'm not gonna lie to use those modern phrases. I was fucking shook. But going back through it again now, and this would be after a reread. This is like my third, fourth time going through Rand's visions, and it's still like
Yeah,
every bit of it is still like, oh shit.
Well, and it's also a little bit crazy because, of course, like, let's be honest, when you're watching a television show or reading a book or, you know, watching a movie or anything like that, there are so few moments when it comes down to it where literally, like, a single line can change everything that you've thought. Or a single moment can go ahead and really just give you chills. Like there really aren't that many TV shows, even when in like, you know, the drama heading and whatnot. There are very few movies that do this. There are very few books and whatnot. And so when you can like probably think of on two hands how many things have done this to you, and then you look back at this single book, and at the end of every single vision, there is a line that breaks you. You're just how in the world did this human being come up with this?
Oh yeah,
it's insane. It's
amazing.
Absolutely incredible.
We're only on the third out of 9 visions that Rand has.
Yeah.
And for me, like, I know I was excited. I was excited about the third vision because it's the birth of the Maidens of the Spear.
Yep.
Where we see them created. And of course, we're going in, I guess, what most people would consider reverse chronological order from most recent to the police are going by somebody's house. No.
That was me.
I mean, from most recent to oldest. But correct. I think looking back through the scenes that it's the fourth vision that Rand has.
Oh, this one hurts.
The most. It's shattered. To me, this is the one that fully, fundamentally, 100% without a question shatters everything I thought I ever understood about the Aiel.
Yep. No, I couldn't agree more. Honestly, this one is rough. So.
And guess what? Oh, we're halfway there. Oh, living on there. I'm mad we all went different ways with the play on that. But I'm also equally happy.
Yeah.
Indeed. So, Josh, since you started us off, do you want to take us through Vision 4?
Oh,
it's your burden.
Through Vision 4. It is my burden.
You know the part I'm talking about, but there becomes a part where a certain individual speaks that I think to fully discuss what they say, we have to give another spoiler warning for the rest of the series.
I agree. There's a lot to unpack here.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, from this point on, if you have not completed the series of The Wheel of Time, you definitely should go do so, because we gonna get into some shit. Y'all been warned.
Y'all been warned, but come back now, you hear?
Come back now, you hear?
All right.
Oh,
now that the warning has happened.
So Rand, he's taken his next step. He's flashing into his next memory.
Whoa, he's flashing?
He is... he's flashing. He's now Luwin, grandson of Adan. They are in the hot, dry, and dusty land. We're to believe that they are in the threefold land. And he's reminiscing. He's reminiscing about a better time in his lifetime, where he's saying, God, the weather was good. We had water. We had all this good stuff. Now I have to cover my face because of all the dust. And of course, we know, in the modern times, as a veiled Aiel is not a good thing. So we're starting to see some of those kinds of things as well. So Luwin is with 4 other people. They're all just kind of hanging there. They're on a mission to rescue some people who were kidnapped, some family members that were kidnapped. And again, this is further back, right? This is before the split. Is that correct?
What do you
Anybody? This is before. I think this is before some of the Aiel started taking weapons up.
And I'm sorry. Remind me exactly which part we're at again. I kind of.
So there, he's Luwin, and he's with a couple other people, and a few of them have been kidnapped.
Yes.
Some of the Aiel have been kidnapped, and they're on a rescue mission.
Literally before weapons are taken up by any Aiel.
No, at this point in time, Aiel are all the way of the leaf. They do not take up weapons against others. And so they're preparing for a rescue mission. They're coming back, and one of the people that are with him, Elijah, I'm going to go with Elijah because that's a cool way to say it. she's gathering up everything. She's like, I'm going to put it in the cook pot. I'm going to put it in a knife. I'm going to get a piece of metal here and I'm going to do this. And then she picks up a couple of swords. And Lewin, Rand/Lewin, looks her dead in the eye and says, no, 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 no. No, 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 no. No swords. You can't do anything with a sword except kill people. And that's not what we're all about.
Bit in the middle?
A spear.
Did you miss a little bit in the middle there about the camp that they're sneaking into?
Oh,
that's the pivotal point. What changes everything?
That's it. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. They actually sneak into the camp. They trip over some shit.
A bunch of noise. Because the 4 men that are there because they're coming to steal the girls back.
Right. And that's what I was saying. It's a rescue mission.
But it's the noise.
They get caught,
which is crazy to think about the Aiel making noise.
Right. This is probably why they get so good at it, though.
I mean, they wake up the first time they ever tried this, it went badly because somebody made some goddamn noise.
It fucked up and changed the entire train of their history. So we need to learn how to be quiet. Like, that's a pretty good fucking motivation. But they make so much noise that they wake up the 4 men that are sitting there sleeping that have stolen the children.
And as they're trying to escape, Lewin, in self-defense, picks up a spear and kills.
Because they literally get backed into a corner where they can't run away.
Yes.
Yep.
And the other ones in the group manage to kill the other 3 guys, and they all just kind of have this oh shit moment. And this is the first time in Aiel history in which an Aiel has spilt the blood of another human.
And then they see Charlin.
Sort of.
Then they start looting.
I will admit that it is a little unclear as to whether anyone has ever done this before, but it is the first time that Rand sees it, and later on something happens that I imagine is the response that always happens if anyone were to ever kill anyone.
I mean, there's dialogue.
This is the first time that anyone's really experiencing it where someone is defiant about it.
Yeah. There's dialogue later by Lewin's grandfather that would lead you to believe that this has happened before.
Yes.
That there have
been other people who have been lost to the mentality that killing is an acceptable or that violence is an acceptable way of thinking. But this is where it's the first time that it happens in Rand's ancestral history.
Yes.
And that is still a big deal.
Right. And so
now this is where you were talking about where Elijah
she starts looting. She starts grabbing everything that can be used. And she picks up the swords. And Lewin kind of taking a step back, kind of backtracking a little bit, kind of rationalizing a little bit. He's like, knives are cool, spears are cool, everything's cool except the swords. Don't bring the swords. No swords. We can hunt with spears, we can provide food with spears, we can provide, we can prepare food with knives. They all have practical uses that don't involve fighting and killing. A sword has one purpose: fight and kill. No swords.
Which again is just a little bit humorous, because I'm not saying that they're the most effective things in hunting, but like at the same time, again, this is him trying to go ahead and justify his actions and make them okay and whatnot. And the fact that he's like, spear acceptable, sword unacceptable, when you've got to imagine that at least a handful of soldiers have absolutely hunted with swords before. Like, he's grasping at whatever he can because he knows deep down in his heart that he has done something that is absolutely detestable.
Oh, yeah.
And he's just trying to hold on to as much of it as he possibly can, knowing that he has fucked up so hard.
The only rationale that I can possibly even think about is when you start looking at the purpose for which an instrument is made. And the spear has a potential to be made solely for hunting, solely for sustenance. But the creation of the sword, in our own history and in the history of the Wheel of Time, history slash future, since time is secular, is it's only been made as a weapon of war. Cyclical, secular. You know what I meant. You're right.
Secular.
You're right. But I know what you.
Secular isn't a word, and it's too close to the word secular that it's hurting me. So cyclical.
Cyclical. You know what I meant, though. Thank you, though, for the correct.
I did. I appreciate
You're
you.
like my living autocorrect, and I appreciate you, Daniel.
Hey, language is like the only. A very well put together knowledge of the English language is the only thing that I bring to this podcast. So
as far
I'm okay,
sir.
Anyway,
and you can see that because the way of the leaf that we learn from the tooth on, which I know I'm saying wrong too, but the Tinkers, is it to not raise a hand even to defend yourself. So what's the point of having a tool that was created only to take a life, only to be able?
No, it's true. No, and that's what I was saying earlier is that, I mean, like, again, it's pretty clear that weapons are weapons. And granted, I mean, like, a spear, I think, is more effective. And I do appreciate that it does come back to the sort of original usage or the original sort of purpose of it. And I do agree that when it comes right down to it, a spear is more useful in hunting than a sword. Anyone who would actually choose to hunt with a sword is weird. But at the same time, like, again, this is really a moment where when I was reading it, I was standing there being like, what? Like, shit, what? You are just trying to justify this any way you can. And I appreciate you because you're so PTSD'd right now. But at the same time, like, there's no reason not to bring the swords and then melt them down into something else that's going to be useful as not war. You're just going ahead and trying your best to make this okay, and it's never going to be okay.
I kind of get it because right now we're dealing with a single generational gap.
Yes.
So far, the other ones have been leaps of at least two to three generations. I say the other ones. There's only two other leaps as of thus far.
Yeah, and both of them have been grandson to grandfather, correct?
Well, one was the first one was
grandson to grandfather.
Well, it was from great grandson.
Nope.
Yep, Mandine was the great grandson of Qumran.
What?
Yep. Mandine
Vort
is the great grandson of Qumran.
You're totally right. So it goes 3 to 2 to 1.
Yeah. And then we go...
yeah, wow. 3 to 2 to 1. Yeah.
So, thank you, fandom.com, for helping me keep the timeline in order.
Yes.
By no means
also
cognition.
Also, thank you, fandom.com, for allowing Andrew to correct me, because God knows I get things wrong just about as much as he gets language wrong. So
we all do.
Continue.
I feel like half this podcast is like one of the three of us getting something wrong and the other two talking about how to fix it. But
it's true.
Yeah. So this is our first, this is a single generation change, going from literally son to father. Because Jordam is the son of Lewin, then we go from Jordam to Lewin. So we get to see this difference because we just had the creation of the Maidens of the Spear after the events that we're seeing now.
Correct.
So to me, it's incredible to see how fast an entire society has gone from we don't hurt nobody to not only do the men go into a war society, but the women do as well.
Oh yeah, and in the previous vision, the nice thing that I kind of appreciated that they talked about is that if you go from Lewin to his grandfather,
mm-hmm.
Or sorry, his father. Sorry, I'm sorry. If you go from Lewin to his son, Geordam is living in a place is living in a time where the Gen Aiel absolutely still without a doubt outnumber all of the other Aiel combined. And we see the forming of the Fardar as Mai. By the time you get to Giordam's grandson Roderick, it absolutely seems like it has gone the other way around. So within 3 generations, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 60 to 90 years, we have seen a full shift from the Gen Aiel are the only Aiel, and they would never even think of harming another person.
Yeah.
All the way to like 60 to 90 years later being completely outnumbered by the other Aiel who think that violence is the answer to just about every problem. It's crazy on so many levels.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
No, it's unreal. And again, you know, just the whole concept that this is based on everything that they abandoned about their way of life is just one big mindfuck.
Right? Well, and the sad thing,
you know, and then
if I'm being honest, is that you just use the word unreal. And I appreciate that that's sort of the phrase is absolutely true. But the saddest part about this to me is that in our world, I can see this happening in an instant. If you actually had a society or group of people who ran around doing no harm to anyone and just getting stepped on at every single turn, I think that it would take very little time for their society to flip from a society of do no harm to more than half of our people,
I mean,
think that saving our kidnapped society members and not getting stepped on and not getting stolen from and whatnot is the right thing to do. And now violence is absolutely a part of our society, even if it's not. I don't necessarily think that it's super realistic to have like it go as far as the Aiel do in any kind of modern society, because violence always being the answer is a little far. But like, again, I mean, we've seen actual real world examples of peaceful societies being met by violent societies and turning into violent societies fairly quickly.
I mean, you've seen the Hunt.
Oh yeah.
And so it is very real that the Aiel would turn violent this quickly.
The thing is every time that I read about the Tinkers and we get into the history of the Aiel and where the Aiel truly came from, because we've already given the spoiler warning for the rest of the series, where they truly come from, is I can't help but think about the European, especially British, France, because the Notre Dame is in France, right? Yeah,
correct.
The French, especially gypsies, that are a people that are just trying to get by. They're just trying to survive. By all historical accounts, they are not really doing any harm. They're just, think of them essentially as very cultured homeless, and they're prostitutes.
Nomads is probably a better word, but sure.
Well, yeah, that is. So very cultured nomads that become systematically, widely oppressed, persecuted, and murdered on a very, very heavily institutional level. And it's the same kind of attitude we see toward even Amon's Field sees Tinkers and says they're going to steal our fucking pots and
our children
and anybody else.
Like what?
What the fuck is wrong with you? How much tobacco have you smoked?
Well, and nobody else is. I mean, like, honestly, it's a little crazy. And the slightly not necessarily humorous thing, but I mean, very apropos thing is that I, without a doubt, I can't say with certainty because I am not Robert Jordan, but I can say with pretty solid certainty that the gypsy lifestyle is exactly what the Tinkers are based on. And so the fact that like all of this is very much real world examples of what the, gypsies in times begone and even in current times have been sort of accused of doing, being overly superstitious, thieves, con artists, blah blah blah, just makes so much sense in terms of the fact that, you know, I absolutely think that Robert Jordan based the Tinkers on the Gypsies, but then you go further back into their history and you find out that they've like always been this way, and at some point they were actually like really revered and like blah blah blah, all of this. It's hilarious to get to the point where you've got this backwoods
Maybe I was
village
born this way.
that is just standing there.
Maybe I
What?
was born this way.
Okay.
There's a reference for the very misunderstood Tinkers, or at this point.
Oh yeah.
That's literally they were born that way.
Well, and of course it is absolutely hilarious in a lot of ways where, again, I mean, we go on this journey with the effectively young adults, children, whatever you actually want to call them or consider them in their society, from Emmons Field. We actually grow with them as far as understanding society, because in Emmons Field, they're like, Tinkers equals bad. They equal stealing and blah, blah, blah. I mean, Perrin makes this comment about they're really good at repairing things, but that's like the only positive thing you hear about them. And then all of a sudden, Perrin and Egwene are with Tinkers. And they're running around with a Tinker camp. And all of the Tinkers are like some of the best people they've met. And you're like, wait a goddamn second.
Everything I know has been a fucking lie.
And so literally, I mean, like, there are so many instances, and this is like the biggest example of really realizing that Rand and Perrin and Matt and Egwene and even like Nynaeve, and I think that's it as far as the ones that actually come out of Emmons Field. And when it comes right down to it, like Tom and Lan and Moraine are all way more educated than they are. But like all five of these people are coming out of their tiny little village with very little understanding of the world. And they just get thrown into these situations that absolutely turn their expectations for what people are outside of their little bubble on their heads entirely. And this is the most ridiculous version of that we're getting, that the entire Aiel society that we've come to learn of has just been flipped
and
over.
that's basically what I was just getting at. Like, imagine where Rand is at right fucking now. We get to follow them as much as the world is being built for us as the readers. The world is being built for our main characters.
Yeah, and that's the way that we learn about the world,
so
is
sitting
through
here,
the eyes of
and we
these
know
people who are realizing they're so wrong.
In this entire point, we've been led to believe that the Aiel have always been and will ever be desert ninjas.
Yup.
And then,
no, that is the best. Literally, if you're going to boil it down to two words, though, that is the absolute best description of the Aiel.
I feel like that'll be the Kmart version of an Aiel costume for Halloween, Desert Ninja.
Yes.
And that's basically how Rand has seen them thus far.
Yeah.
And then they're like, you need to go into the special city around these special things and walk through them and learn about your history. The motherfucker basically, in terms of time span, not too long ago found out that he is of Aiel ancestry, or not necessarily that, but so much it's not actually the father he knew's son.
Yeah.
The kid
literally within the last year, Rand has realized that he is not Tam Althor's son, and that he actually is the thing that people mistake him for when he walks around outside of Emmons Field.
Then you have people like Lan who are like, here's everything we know about the Aiel. They are the fiercest warriors we've ever known. You don't trifle with them. They will fuck you up. And Rand has now taken like his fourth fucking step, and he's like, the fuck?
Well, and I will, to be fair, I will also throw out
bullshit.
The only way that Lan actually talks about people is by their fighting prowess, so it's not really that surprising that Lan only tells him about their ability to fight. Because literally, Lan walks around the world being like, "Can you fight? All right, I don't care about you. Can you fight? Yes. All right, cool. Now we're gonna have a conversation, and I'm gonna figure you out, and then we're gonna be good." And
Lan
so literally anytime
Goku.
anyone asks Lan about anything, he's like, "Oh yeah, they're good fighters," or he's like, "Psh, they're garbage at fighting. What a useless people." And you're like,
literally, Lan is Goku with 8 times the IQ.
I don't know, he's more like Vegeta.
I don't ever see Lan as being like very prideful. Whereas he's
no.
If Lan
Agreed,
is like Vegeta,
but he's definitely looking around at everybody, checking out their power levels and whatnot.
But so Goku does too, but in a very dumb way.
If he's like Vegeta,
fair.
If Lan is like Vegeta, then he is like post.
Yeah, he's like
yes,
Vegeta.
Yes, agreed.
You hit my Bulma. Like he's that. But
yeah,
so I
don't know. He might even be Super or Dragon Ball Super Vegeta with the beard.
Yeah, that would be it.
Possibly.
Ugh, even Vegeta with a beard. What a gross idea. Who did that?
So, all of that said about the fourth vision and a nice little tangent there. And then you've got Lewin. It's
always the madness.
Lewin, Alicia, Luca, Jiren, and Charlin come back.
Well,
with the rescued kids. Well, I mean,
Charlin's body comes back.
Yeah. Yeah. Charlin doesn't make it. And they come back. And now they have to answer for what they did. And if you would allow me, if you would indulge me, dear listener, a recitation. Also, Rafe, because I know you're listening, consider this my audition. You killed men? And what of the covenant? We harm no one. No one! There is no reason good enough to justify killing another human being. None! We must accept what comes. Our sufferings are sent to test our faithfulness. We accept and endure. We do not murder. We have not strayed from the way. You have abandoned it. You are Daishin no longer. You are corrupt, and I will not have the Aiel corrupted by you. Leave us, strangers. Killers! You are not welcome in the wagons of the Aiel.
Ooh.
And scene.
Nope, there's still one more line for you, Daniel.
Well, for me.
Indeed.
Now
that was Josh's audition, and I think it was excellent.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and then Lewin,
in his desperation,
he does the honorable thing. He does the honorable thing.
I am still Aiel.
And then he veils his face.
And this is the first instance of face veiling that we actually hear of, even in the visions. Oof.
Right. Well, and at the beginning of this particular vision, he's got his face veiled to protect it from the dust, of course.
Yes.
But he's remembering these. These are so like this is a memory within a vision that ran.
So
yes,
let's unpack. Let's try to do it chronologically, starting from the end of the fourth vision. What we've seen transpire for the Aiel. For one, we have seen the evolution of the Aiel from anybody in the Aiel being from the way of the leaf to taking the first steps towards being the warrior culture that we know of now.
Yes.
With this infiltration of the camp, reclaiming children and wives and sisters that were stolen from them and obviously not being very good at it because they wake people up and using spears, which at this point would have been the regular full-size spears at the same time,
Yes,
but
right.
still holding to that very way of the leaf notion of, and it's almost like the Aes Sedai notion of, an Aes Sedai will not make any weapon for man to kill man, or no instrument of war, however it's worded, not warded. Too many different
worded.
Aiel.
You're good.
I mean, Aes Sedai phrases.
Too many wards.
Yeah, too many wards. So we've seen them go to that, and then we get into the first.
Well, and
the first
before we get to there, I love how Lewin and his friends come back to the camp, and they know they've done wrong. Don't get me wrong; they are aware
Yes.
of that. But they seem to
Yes.
think that they're actually going to be accepted, not necessarily as heroes. I don't think that they are actually foolish enough to think that that is going to happen, but that what they did was justified and that they're actually going to be fine to come back into their society. And of course, they are not. They are certifiably abandoned and shunned
Oh, they are exiled.
by their people.
So
100%.
And so it
exiled.
really
and what else are they
And
supposed to
disowned.
do in that situation?
Yeah, no, and again, it's just kind of fascinating to me to see again. Not only did they sort of abandon the way of the leaf, not only did they change course and whatnot from being do no harm and whatnot, but they went out and killed people and then thought that they were going to come back and be able to just follow the way of the leaf again in some ways, and it's just so weird. On some level, both that they thought that that was going to be true, and then like how much his dad blows up at him.
Oh, it's his grandfather.
Or sorry, you're correct. His grandfather is just fucking beside himself.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It's kind of fascinating. But anyway, so yeah, we see them go from the way of the leaf is the only way to going and saving their kidnapped people to the next vision where we see not only are they actually fighting to protect themselves and get their kidnapped people back, but it's actually a much larger swath of people than just like the 4 people who are
I mean, here's the thing, like,
or the 3 people who are disowned here.
so I feel a sneeze coming on. Hold
Right.
on, edit out. Fuck me in the head. Oh God,
Bless you.
thank you. It's a horrible sneeze. That actually really hurt. But
It happens.
so we see them, and it's, if you look at the way of the leaf, the way it goes, and we've already read. Actually, no. Has Aram done his thing yet?
No.
Okay.
No, that is not yet.
Okay. Well,
Perrin is not back in the 2 Rivers yet.
that's right. But we get to see essentially kind of the same thing happen again, because we've already put out spoiler warning for the rest of the series.
Right.
But they're not just cast out, not just exiled like you've broken our laws, you must leave. It's they're berated as the worst of the worst, to the point where Lewin's grandfather, someone that he would have guaranteed looked up to forever, was like, "You're a stranger. We don't even know you."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
that is heartbreaking in its own. And all Lewin says is, "I am still Aiel," which is,
Yeah.
he was,
And he basically
And-
just yells it at their back.
yeah,
Like they've already given up on him and they turn around and pretend he does not exist. And
Right.
he is just
And-
heartbroken and devastated and just yelling at the backs of their heads.
Yep.
This almost plea.
it's that deformed dude from
That he
300.
is
You were
still
wrong.
Aiel.
You were wrong, father. You were wrong, Leonidas.
Exactly.
Yes.
And it's
Exactly.
so heartbreaking.
And then
But then you,
it's even more. I was just going to say it's even more when you go take it chronologically, advance it into Rand's third vision when Geordum is now an old man.
In the third vision,
And he's now
Geordum
seeing
is
it.
the son of Lewin. He's 18 years old. Or you mean when Lewin's an old man?
Yeah, when Lewin
No.
is an old man.
I'm sorry. You're right.
Okay.
You're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, when Lewin
I
is an
skipped
old
all
man
those
and
facts.
Geordum
Lewin
is
I may
the
not be
young
able to
man.
talk, but I feel like Father Time this fucking episode.
I like it.
But
It's
you see,
super
Geordum
helpful.
I'm glad.
is what, the grandson of Lewin,
Nope,
right?
Nope.
son.
Geordum is the son
Yeah,
of Lewin.
son.
So this is so basically what we're looking
That's
at.
right.
Literally one generation past.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Third generation is the generation after a young Lewin is banished from the Aiel, and that's why we get the
Right.
name the Aiel split from the Gen Aiel. So we see Adon and the rest of the Aiel being the Gen Aiel, and Lewin and the others that infiltrated the camp and any others that followed them afterwards or were cast out for the same thing, making up the plain Aiel that we start to become familiar with, starting here at the end of the fourth vision and into the third vision.
Yeah, and as I said, I mean, it's
Right.
just crazy that it does talk about Geordum says that the Gen Aiel outnumber the Aiel,
Mm-hmm.
but
This is a very recent split.
by
Yes.
by the second vision, we're already at a point where it seems like they're actually at least have half and half.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing how quickly the Lewin and the two others that are banished with him sort of become their own society and, for lack of a better phrase, corrupt the rest of the Aiel and their ways.
I mean, are you ready for an
and
absolutely
turn them into a violent society?
Are you ready for an absolutely astonishing, like, Empire State Building height shocker from the fourth to the third vision?
Go for it.
So Adon says, "You have not strayed from the way; you have abandoned it. You are Dashin no longer. You are corrupt. And I will not have the Aiel corrupted by you. Leave us, strangers, killers. You are not welcome in the wagons of the Aiel." Literally, by the next generation, the Gen Aiel, which are now the group of Aiel that Adon is ruling over, that presumably has probably passed away by now. I'd almost guarantee it, because he was a grandfather in the fourth vision. Fourth vision. And now it's the Gen Aiel, the ones that say no violence, come running to the Aiel that Lewin has essentially founded, the start of the modern Aiel, and has come running to them for help. Saying, please help us. Despite their far lower numbers, which it would seem like they're about half the size, I would agree, as the Gen Aiel.
Yeah.
So they're this very small band of, we used to be a part of you, but we're not anymore. And it almost seems like they're kind of like a shadow that follows the Gen around. And it almost seems to me that it's Lewin's way of trying to assert. Actually, no, this is not just a singular generation gap. This is another grandson jump. So it's not one generation gap, it's two generation gaps. Because the fourth vision is Lewin, grandson of Adon, and then
No.
Jordan's of Lewin. Wait, no, you're right. It is.
Yeah, so it's one. It's one from fourth to third, because Geordum is the son of Lewin. So Lewin has Geordum.
Yeah,
And in
Jordan
the
is
next
the generation
generation.
after.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, you're right. But it almost seems like Lewin has instilled this kind of obligatory service ideal with what we would call regular Aiel now. That he still feels guilty and like he let his grandfather down and that kind of stuff. So he's instilling that we stay with the Gen Aiel. They kept to the old tradition. We honor them. They're better people than us for holding to it, whatever the case, whatever he's saying. And it's our job now to try to atone for our sins by protecting those that can hold true to the way.
Yep.
So it's a very nice, very sentiment redemption arc that based off of what we know by the Aiel by this point in the physical series, in the series that we're reading, The Wheel of Time, we would not expect necessarily from what has been sold to us as an entirely just warrior society. They fight because they fight. And now you're getting to the meat, bones, and potatoes of a society that at its founding was never meant to raise a hand against anyone.
Mm-hmm. And would rather die than provoke violence.
So when you do this kind of dive...
And this goes
sorry,
back
Josh,
to what...
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, this goes back to what I was said at the beginning, where they have such a reverence for the Gen Aiel. And many of them nowadays, from Rand's time, don't even know why they have so much respect and reverence for the Tinkers. They don't even know why. They just know that's the way it is. You treat them with respect. They have much G. You honor them, and you protect them above all else.
So the two thoughts,
and if anyone lays a hand on
Dad
a Tinker,
told me to.
You are the lowest of the low.
Yeah. So the two thoughts I have on this is there's one, we're only on the 4th out of 9 visions. And you can already so much empathize with the absolute shock factor that comes to the entirety of the Aiel culture when Rand reveals what happens. The second that just came to me as you two were talking is the origination of Giotto.
Yep.
And the concepts behind it and what drives it. The certain aspects where you don't ask somebody what they did to incur the shame. And you can see this thing. I'm going to say it now. The Aiel culture is the best culture that Robert Jordan has created in The Wheel of Time. Because there is so much to it. There's so much explanation. There's so much depth.
It's a very...
It's a culture that you honestly can't understand why things happen within the culture by just reading the series and reading through it. You have to spend time going through things like the visions that Rand has at Rhuidean. I know
you're so close.
Yeah, it's never gonna happen.
Stop trying to make Rhuidean happen. It's never going to happen, Gretchen.
Sadness.
Yeah, no, honestly, I agree. And to be fair, I will also admit that there are a number, to any listeners out there who are a little annoyed that we didn't, that we're saying that about the Aiel. There are a number of other cultures that he really does not actually go into this much detail about, so it is a little unfair as far as the amount of information that we get on these people. But at the same time, I could not agree more. I think that what he does with the Aiel is so cool that even if we actually got more on the Aviendha Mir, or on the a number of other smaller cities or regions or whatever that he doesn't really deep dive into so much, I still think that the Aiel would be the coolest one that Robert Jordan created.
Like, I feel like the Aiel is somebody's like, I bet you can't create an entirely immersive culture that has a serious backstory that people can empathize with, understand. And Robert Jordan went, hold my beers. And created the history of the Aiel. I mean,
challenge.
And when you look at the rest of the series, and for those of you that have already finished the series, those of you that are still listening, even if you haven't finished the series, it's going to be a broad statement. But the impact that the Aiel have from the first time we meet them all the way through the absolute last book, all the way through book, all the way through book 14,
through book 12. 14.
We need to stop this before Andrew starts speaking another language entirely.
But all the way through book 14.
What is he going to start speaking? English with a Swedish accent?
I don't know, but he
started.
German. We should have known, because he started this recording, and our Patreons will know, but he started this recording with a vocabulary lesson.
Right?
The irony is boggling my mind right now. I chose the
wrong phrase for that, and it's going to haunt me for the remainder of the time this episode is ever available.
We love you.
Oh,
Anyway,
Andrew,
guys. I mean,
you're a good man. Anyway, so finish up your thought there.
uh-huh. I kind of lost train of thought. To be honest. Oh, no. I had it for a second. It literally
No.
went off.
Aiel are awesome.
I mean, they just
Aiel
are.
are
I
the
mean,
they're
best.
awesome.
They're
it's awesome
cool.
that they're created, and I mean, all the cultures are incredibly. There is a lot of depth to all the cultures that we see in the Wheel of Time, but the IEL have the
They're very
unique
well written.
privilege, the unique aspect of being connected to the main story enough, having the right exposures at the right times, being in Robert Jordan's mind at the right places at the right times, and continued by Brandon Sanderson to give us the most detailed, I think, in-depth experience with the IO. Because through
Yes,
Rand, we get
agreed.
to see the significant history of the IL, and through Aviendha, we get to see a significant future for the IL. Spoiler for
Yep.
those of you that did not know.
We already threw that
I
out.
know,
true.
but
We're
I'm
good.
saying it again because I feel like it's
We're
funny.
So here's the thing, guys. There's so much to get through that we are going to definitely break this into two parts as well. So if you're here listening, waiting for us to jump into the next vision, I know.
But I was waiting for my bedtime
For
story.
those of you that are
you're just
only
gonna
that are
have
not a
to
part of our
listen.
Patreon and are only going to hear the actual episode, which without edits, right now as we're recording, is at 3 hours and 15 minutes. An hour or so of that, an hour, give or take a couple minutes, is just stuff that's going to be listened to by Patrons. That gets cut out, going straight to Patreon. That leaves 2 hours and 15 minutes of content that, as of right now, is going to be edited, trimmed down to probably about 3 hours and 10 minutes, anywhere from 3 hours to 3 hours and 10 minutes. 2 hours. What the fuck? Math is hard. I went to public school, all right? I'm sorry. It's going to be trimmed down to 2 hours.
Wait, the restaurant?
There's a restaurant called Public Schools?
Oh yeah, it's out here in LA, and
Nice.
it's actually really good.
Well, that already makes it
Josh,
different.
we may have to take you when you come down for vacation.
Yeah. Which, sadly
Sounds
enough,
good
I
to
found
me.
out I
See.
won't be able to come. Because I have
It's okay.
massive,
Oh, wow.
massive club obligations to take care of now.
Well, we will either pour one out for you or
fucking
drink
rich
one
shit.
for you and take some pictures. We'll figure it out for
Indeed.
We're
for
going to
you.
do it, and because Utah is closer to being in the middle than anything than South Carolina or California are, we're going to have to start like an Ashaman Con in Utah.
Yeah,
It's going to be very interesting.
All right.
Black
I'm
Tower
down.
Con in
A
Salt
Black
Lake
Tower
City.
Con. You
We
pay
can make
$100
this
bucks,
happen.
show up, and we're not even there. It's a true con. We don't even say convention, just leave it as con.
All right.
Wait,
I'll
Fire
get
Fest?
Why
my
did you
people
do
on
it? Taim told me I had to.
No, it was Deshiva, I promise. All right, guys. Well, thank you all very much for listening. As stated, this is going to be part one of our deep dive into the visions that Rand has in Rhuidean, which basically ties into the Aiel pretty hard. So definitely come back for part two. That'll be next week. We love having you guys here. If you feel like we missed anything in the first four, or if you think that we should talk about anything in the next five, definitely let us know. We're always open on our Twitter, at Tower Podcast, or on our Discord. Ask us for the invite and we'll be happy to send it to you, or it's on our Podbean. Email, Instagram, all of those different things. If you have anything to say to us, we are open to hearing it. Positive, negative, totally in the middle, who
I have
cares?
something
We, as we always say, we absolutely do this for us. We love talking to each other. It's super fun. But at the end of the day, this podcast exists for you. And if we're not doing something that you want us to, or if we are doing something that you guys don't like, do let us know. We love to hear feedback.
Cannot improve without
Indeed.
criticism.
Indeed.
But I do want to touch on the hilarity of the fact that I don't know if he intended it or not, but Jacko Shadows has bamboozled us by the idea of Rand's visions in Rhuidean into doing a deep dive on Aiel culture and history. Which is essentially the same request.
Basic.
Don't get me wrong,
booster.
I absolutely love it because Aiel culture is my favorite culture from the series. Waifu comes from the Aiel culture for me. If you don't know what waifu is, just Weeb, and it's the second most searched part of Weeb. If you didn't already know about the igloos and Tremel King.
All right. Love it. All right. From all of us here at the Black Tower to all of you out there, wherever you are, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for allowing us to lull you with the sultry sounds of the Black Tower.
Did this just become ASMR? Like, what is happening?
We need to turn up our gains and get like super close to the mic and start chewing like peanut butter sandwiches or something.
No, but seriously, again, guys, thank you so much. We love to have you guys with us, and we will absolutely see you next week with another deep dive into the second half of the visions that Rand has in Rhuidean. Have a lovely rest of your week. For the Black Tower podcast, I am Daniel.
I am Silence. Andrew. Andreezy.
And I am Excite. Good night, everybody.